Well, that has set us up nicely for what's to come on Sunday. Let's hear from Daniel Farker and Ruben Amorim.
Yes, on Sunday we have another fixture against a big name. Everyone knows how big this game is for our supporters, for everyone who's connected with Leeds United, and it's a special game. But you know, the circumstances are perhaps not in our favor at the moment. There less time to recover than the key players that will miss a game, but we have at least advantage to have a home game right now, and for that at Elland Road we always have a chance, and we try our very best also to fulfill the dreams of our supporters.
They have a lot of pace, and sometimes we struggle with pace. They are confident, but we prove that we can win any game in any situation, in every context. So we will try to do that again. We know that they change the system. They have different players in front. They can. The last game they rotate the 2 players that usually are the starters. So they have good players, good manager. Great environment. Is going to be a tough game.
Well, here's an interesting battle for me, because this is one of 2 managers who've recently made some changes and tweaked tactics, and it worked for Ruben Amorim finally going 4 at the back, and they managed to get a victory over Newcastle. Then not so great against Wolves. I'm sure the fans are still raging. Does he stick with that now?
I mean, even the Newcastle one, he couldn't quite stick to it for the whole game. He did make a few changes, but you see them take the lead here, and you just sort of expect that you're going to try and push for the second goal, and they've had chances, but it was a performance that I think Manchester United fans have seen too many times in recent years. You know, to not get a result against a team that's bottom of the league and not won a game yet is one that probably goes back to that place of they're getting a lot of criticism.
No, I think Rachel's absolutely right. And I'd go further and say I think this is Man United's level at the moment. And what I mean by that, and I don't mean to be disparaging at all, but I think when you look at the inconsistency of this Manchester United side, the defensive frailties as well, they're almost in a false position in some respects, because in any other Premier League year, they'd be a lot lower than they are right now. But because there's a lot of inconsistency outside of the top 3, they're in a position that is almost deceptive. But if you're a Leeds side, I think they've only failed to score once at home so far this season. You will be looking at Manchester United and the fact that they always give you an opportunity to score, just like they gave to the worst Premier League side in the country at the moment, Wolves, who only had 2 points. That was only their 3rd point of the season, and it's gifted to them by a Manchester United side that can't kill the game, that leaves the back door open, that you just don't know which side or which shape is going to turn up from one week to the next. I think Daniel Farke will be looking at his players and saying to them, go for the jugular. You might just get a result.
Sorry.
All I'm saying is, if Man United do manage a victory, stay off TikTok. Somebody is clipping, your fan club is clipping that up. After last time you predicted Crystal Palace, he was all over TikTok.
Yeah, they were all after me. But they can't argue with the fact that at the moment they're just too inconsistent for me to hang the hat on them right now. Was that harsh?
No, I think it's very difficult to know what you're going to get from them. And I think the best that I've seen them look is when they're in that back 4 against Newcastle. I mean, they've had good moments this season. That's probably a little unfair to say, but they started that game against Newcastle and the back 4 and the structure they had, they looked really good. You could see there was a confidence, there was a comfort. Amorim, for me, still makes strange changes. They did well against Newcastle in the end, but even I thought that was one of the best games I've seen Casemiro have. He was very dominant. You could tell he was that person that was in control, and he took him off. And even Casemiro was you could see he was disappointed because he knew. He was like, I'm having a game here. You know when you're having a game. And that set of results, whilst it's only 2 defeats and 8 games away there, 8 games, that's a reasonable return. Their position in the league is reasonable. I feel going into this game against Leeds, ahead of it, the feeling I get, Leeds probably are going to play with a little more feeling of what the game means than I expect Manchester United will. Therefore, with a crowd at Elland Road, I can see Leeds feeling very confident with this one. And I think Manchester United need to understand what this game means in the environment they're going to put themselves in, to understand this is going to be really tough.
Well, especially if you consider that the form Leeds are on at the moment. And that brings me to the second point about positional switches, because Daniel Farke at halftime against Manchester City made a change in formation. They scored 2 goals. They lost very narrowly there, 3-2. And they've gone on a run. They're unbeaten since then.
Yeah, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah.
It could be their lethal weapon.
Yeah.
If you look at this run of form, undefeated in 6 games, crucial wins against Chelsea and Crystal Palace, managed to hold Liverpool to 2 draws in that sequence as well. And even Sunderland managed to score against Sunderland. We started talking about Manchester City and their inability to score against Sunderland. This is a Leeds side that you can't sleep on. And I think, you know, listen, Manchester United, as you've been saying, we've been giving them their credit as it's due. See me backtracking now. No. We give them credit where it's due for a good performance against the Newcastle side, where they played with a 4. They look so much more at home with a 4. All of this historical success has come with a 4. In this system, and I don't want to set too much store by the system because they've spent a lot of money on some very good players who we feel should be doing better. But there's a lack of focus, concentration, discipline. Leeds will look at their recent run of form and they will say, if we can maintain that confidence, we will have a chance.
Yeah, especially someone like you said, they need to go for the jugular. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's been on this incredible run. That draw at Anfield was the first time in that run that he'd not managed to score. So a tough one for Manchester United coming up at a rocking Ellen Road, as you so right. New Year's Day was short on goals, but it was not short on drama. Enzo Maresca, did you, Mr. Scoop, get to the ground on the beach? Did you have any idea?
Yeah, the word on the street was that he was in trouble, and he'd been sending out smoke signals ever since that interview he did where he said that the Everton game. We were talking about this before the show, actually. When you're a journalist and you're in a press conference, and there will have been, we're recording this on a Friday afternoon, there would have been loads of journalists around the UK going to press conferences at Premier League clubs. And what those journalists want is exactly what Maresca offered, with no encouragement from the press pack whatsoever. He basically said that the 48 preceding hours had been the worst of his time at Chelsea. Now, the moment he said that, he turned the hourglass up on his whole tenure at the club, because who's he talking about? He says he's not talking about the fans, he's not talking about the players, he could only be talking about something or someone within the club. And once he'd done that, you could see everything accelerate, and it's ended now with him leaving.
What did you make of it?
Well, I was surprised that he's gone. But yeah, just like Darren said, you know, there's been murmurings of discontent within the Chelsea board, and how he's not probably had as much freedom as he might like. But I don't know if that's, you know, he's a younger manager, and I think nowadays in football, and especially at a club like Chelsea, they have an infrastructure where there's a lot of people that take on a lot of responsibility with things like signings and movement. They obviously have had a huge squad that they've had to move players around for different reasons, financial fair play, all these things. So it actually is quite a complex mix, and I maybe just wonder if for Maresca in the end, that fueled a lot of his fire of what frustrated him and how he wanted to do it. It appears like he has bigger intentions, and I don't know that that's being particularly portrayed that well on him.
No.
But we'll see.
You know, this is his record in all competitions at Chelsea. Let's not forget this man won 2 trophies not too long ago. I was shocked in a league where very little shocks me to see the news when I kind of rose from my celebrations on New Year's Day. I was like, am I hallucinating? What's going on? That did surprise me quite a lot. I mean, there are those 2 trophies. The money spent, 521.4 million, 155 out of 92 matches.
That's quite an interesting set of numbers, firstly because of the money that they've spent. If you think about where they are right now, when they drew with Arsenal at the end of November, they were 6 points behind the league leaders. Now they're 15 points behind. When you look at the fact that he's won 2 trophies, one of those trophies was the Club World Cup. It was an outstanding performance against a PSG side who thought that Chelsea were there for the taking. You know, there were murmurings of them thinking about how they were going to receive their trophy. That's how confident they were. And this was in a brilliant season for PSG as well, the French champions. So when you think about what Maresca did, you can't dismiss the Club World Cup. It was brilliant. But the problem with Chelsea over the last 5 years is that they've had these fantastic moments and then they've been punctuated by inconsistency just like this that we're seeing on the screen?
I think that run, though, was almost in some ways inevitable, as well as some of the little injuries they've picked up, some of the concerns they haven't had. You know, they're worried about certain players like Reece James because of his injury history, other players as well within that. Cole Palmer's obviously had a few niggles, and the load whilst winning the Club World Cup was incredible, deserves huge credit. It almost felt inevitable they might hit this point in this season and there might just be a little wobble. Where they are in the league, where they're in the Champions League, I think they're really well placed. I think he's done a great job. I think the recent run, there's a lot of for me, there's a lot of factors that come into that beyond the Maresca situation in its own.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Champions League. Let's not forget that before that Arsenal result, they did beat Barcelona in quite a stunning performance as well.
Another one of their brilliant results. Yeah. You know, I think Rachel's right in so much as I think that what Chelsea are missing and have been for a long time is experience. If you think about Maresca's time at the club, he hasn't signed a single player over 30 years of age. If you look at the clubs that are doing well, all of those clubs, whether they're in the race for the title, the race for Europe, or even surprising a few people like Brentford are with Jordan Henderson in their midfield, they have that experience. They have that head, that older head that can say to the younger players around them, let's keep our feet on the ground, maybe just put our foot on the ball.
And I think that's another one of those points that, because recruitment now is often done, there's a lot of statistics used, there's a lot of people that use it based on algorithms and future planning and things like that. Older players have very small resale. You know, if you buy someone in the region of 30 to 34, you probably aren't going to sell them on. And sometimes I think that puts clubs off because of financial fair play. There's almost an element of, we can't get anything back on those players. So I sometimes think as well, that's another reason why often we're seeing clubs not look towards that.
And the problem with that is that if you look at Chelsea's season so far, they've dropped 15 points from winning positions, and that's more than any other club in the Premier League. Look at that. There's a confirmation. And I think as far as Chelsea are concerned, the business model at Chelsea, and it's important to look at that business model because it plays into what you've been saying. They want to bring in players, some of whom they will speculate on and maybe sell big if they happen to be successful and they get an offer they can't refuse. But all of them will suffer for the lack of somebody, dare I say it, like yourself, in the latter years of your career, where you're able to tell maybe a centre-half alongside you, go, stay, you know, you're able to organise a back four, you're able to impose your leadership on your goalkeeper or on the players in front of you. Chelsea don't have that. They've got a lot of fiery, exuberant, unpredictable players, but they don't have the consistency in terms of psychological solidity, if you want, that is going to get them the consistency that they just don't have at the moment.
Yeah, it's like when a team smells blood, even at Stamford Bridge, there's nobody in there to keep them